Hello, my name's Ellen. I'm the Corporate Projects Manager at Triodos Bank UK, and it's a pleasure to be talking to you all today. I hope you're really enjoying the summit so far. So I'm here to explore how we can be funding our future. And in particular, I'm going to talk a bit about how economics and finance, and notably banks, can play a role in climate action. First up, we're going to think about donuts. I sadly don't have any donuts for us to eat this morning because I'm actually talking more about donut economics. This is a concept pioneered by a UK economist, Kate Raworth, and it's this massive seismic shift actually in how our economic thinking works that comes down to a very clear and easy to understand idea and principle that's also pretty difficult to argue with. And what the donut is talking about is a shift away from our traditional growth obsessed, more linear economic system where we're just constantly making and using more stuff in a kind of take, make, use, lose type fashion to something that's more circular. And I'm sure you've heard terms thrown around the circular economy and the way that reuses materials back into the system. And the donut's really including a lot of those ideas. I'm going to flash up a brief diagram for you to explain that a little bit better here now, and to show you some of the key bits. So hopefully you can see this one. And the principle is that if you look at that inner section of the donut, the kind of hole where there's the shortfall arrow, then that's everything we need. That's those kind of core things that we want to provide for in terms of everybody's needs and fundamental human rights. We want to bring everybody out of that hole. We want everyone to have those things and be in the safe and just space for humanity. But then we don't want to push beyond that. We don't want to grow so much and use so many resources that we actually push out into these overshoot areas and cause problems like climate change, but also like all these others. So it's about existing in that donut in the middle, providing for all our needs and fundamental human rights, whilst also living within planetary boundaries. And so part of this is linked around the fact that for too long, we've measured the health of our economy and our progress and our success by kind of the profits that we've made and the growth in GDP, gross domestic product, whereas actually there are so many things that we don't measure that we really value, and so many things in our society that are important to us that haven't got a price on them. I think this is something we saw really clearly during COVID, where we started valuing our health and our family and our community and the fact that we could get out in nature far more than what was going on with the economy. And so the way we assign value is really integral to tackling climate change and to how we fund things and invest for the future. And I'm just going to share with you very briefly a short trailer for a film that articulates this very wonderfully by WWF and Netflix.
The value we place on a stable natural world will ultimately determine its future. Do we invest money in the practices that take us deeper into this crisis, or in the solutions that could get us out of it?
The problem with climate change is that it's not a quarterly issue, it's a quarter-century issue.
There's over 300 trillion in the global capital markets, and that money can be harnessed to do a great deal of good.
The biggest risk is inaction today.
This is the most well-educated and the most well-paid industry, and I'll be disappointed if we cannot change ourselves.
So you heard it there. economics and finance can change the world, but what's been happening? So in actual fact, in the 5 years following the Paris Agreement, from that famous COP just a few years ago, the world's top 60 private sector banks put trillions of money into fossil fuels. They continued to invest in something that was actively causing harm to the world and contributing to climate change. But people are waking up to the fact, and that film is a demonstration of it, that actually we can change our economic systems in the way that the donut is suggesting. We can invest as financial institutions actually in things that are positive for the world. And it doesn't necessarily matter if profit is part of that. There can be impact too. And I wanted to share a little bit about Triodos Bank and what we think about the role of banking in society, because I think that's a nice microcosm, a nice example of how this can work. So we truly believe that all banks should exist to offer a service to people, and that banks have power over how they make their loans and investments, and that all financial institutions and investors have power. But with that power comes responsibility to use that money for the good of people and planet. And an easy way to think about this is in aligning it to the Sustainable Development Goals, which look not only to tackle climate change, but also to support a just transition to a world that provides for people within planetary boundaries in much the same way as the donut is talking about. And so here are some examples to whet your appetite of the types of investments that Triodos, as one investor thinking like this, has done recently. So we had the UK's first all-electric intercity coach scheme. We had solar panels installed at RSPB nature reserves around the country, and energy efficiency measures put in place to reduce the carbon footprint of London hospitals. And so as we start changing our concept of value and thinking about what decent returns can really look like, I wanted to ask you all to think about how you might invest money or how you might finance things for a just transition to a net zero world. Because actually, in a way, we're all bankers, we're all investors. We can all make decisions about how we use our money, about where we choose to bank, about what we choose to buy, about where we might invest. We can all tell our governments what we'd like them to do with public money too. And we can be a part of the systemic change that we need to see. Thank you very much.